live. We are here with Mr. Jesse James Figueroa. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure if it's Figueroa, if it's Jess James Music, which of the combinations and names it's supposed to be. I'm just rolling with all the iterations I found on the internet. But it's truly a pleasure to be here. This is Perspectives. It's been a minute, but we're back. Unfortunately, it's going to be just myself, Holden Stephan Roy, here tonight, holding it down as Littyyy Bro Flacko was unable to join us. But this is the show we do at end of the week over here, where we go through the lives of interesting people such as Mr. Figueroa. And we like to start the show off with a little bit of how the show came to be, and it actually all kind of ties back into the same very Littyyy Bros project that you were involved with back in the day. At one point, y'all had that mixed up by Merker Miyagi up in Montreal, who happens to be the homeboy. So he had shared that over on Facebook. I saw it. I ended up catching the vibe of the album. We did a little review, which led to an interview. That interview led Flacko to kind of push this direction of the show at end of the week, and has kind of been on this vibe of introducing me to New York City, the culture, end of the week vibes, and it's been this whole exploration into this universe that is far different than anything I come from and what I've seen. In a lot of ways, you could say I've encountered a lot of moments where people have said to me, nah, I mean, and the truth is I very rarely nah what they mean. So with that, it really is a pleasure to have you here. I have listened to a fair bit of you rapping at this point, just in the general. I've seen you on the end of the week Zoom freestyling off the dome, and it's ridiculous. I've seen your talent, your artistry. I know you do the production. I know you do the mixing. You kind of handle like a lot of things. You like a top tier one out there with it. So it's really a pleasure to have you here. But with that,
Thank you.
to start this off right, could you just, I guess, introduce yourself a little bit, but tell us where you're from and the way Flacko would put it, where your parents are from. And that would be a good place to start it before we open it up with our opening question.
All right. My name is Jesse James Figueroa. I'm from the Bronx. I was born in East Harlem, though. Both my parents were born in Puerto Rico, but migrated to New York. My dad spent his earlier years in the Bronx. My mom's in East Harlem. My dad moved to East Harlem when they were both in junior high school, and that's how they kind of met each other. So they've been together for a long time. And yeah, I consider myself a uptown New Yorker, pretty much East Harlem and the Bronx.
That's super cool, and it's mad helpful. So you were coming from the Bronx at the beginning part, and that's important for the real opening question, which is a little bit of a story. And when it lands, you can answer it, and we're going to definitely get to know you a little bit better as we go through your life a bit. So this all starts with my girlfriend, and she's washing the dishes one time, and she's playing that Black Eyed Peas song on her phone. I got a feeling, ooh. She's vibing, and she's dancing, and she's doing her thing. And I look at her, and I start thinking to myself, when the fuck did this song become chores music? Because if you think about this track and you run it back 10, 11 years, this is like the middle of the night, everybody's faded, super turn up anthem. It's like the happiest moment of the night. It was even the happiest moment for kids and shit. It was like a party vibe. And then all of a sudden, 10, 11 years goes by. We all get a little bit older in life. The song, it doesn't change at all because it's a song. They don't really change. But we as people evolve so much that the context of the song's role that it plays in our life is not flipped from something like the party vibe to the I'm doing dishes, I'm doing some cardio, I'm working out, I'm doing some chores. And I started to realize how, as we get older, we kind of use this kind of party fun music from back in the day, and we kind of listen to that when we're doing the more boring things to bring ourselves back to that place. And it got me thinking about how as artists, we're all on these journeys and these evolutions continually happen. And when we think about the story of us as artists, we often only ever started at this place of like adolescence. Like you watch the interviews, you listen to people talk about it, and they'll say stuff like, oh man, I fell in love with hip hop when I was 11, or I started writing rhymes when I was 13, and it's like all of that is true, and it's a very powerful part of the story, but it's definitely not the beginning of anybody's musical journey. In fact, music's one of those things that's always around us. Like if you run that all the way back to when you were born and you got popped out, there was likely a song playing in the room already being absorbed into you from that moment onwards. So like, I know this is like it's super impactful because I can remember being like 4 or 5 years old in Montreal. in the apartment. My dad's got the gray boxes, these like amps and preamps and radios and tape decks and everything strung together with wires going out to the speakers on all around, giving us this surround sound feel. He'd be busting his Led Zeppelin tapes and things like that in the daytime. At nighttime, though, it was like the club mixes and shit straight from the clubs, like live radio stuff. My mom's was more of the love songs and the musicals, all kinds of different vibes. But all that to say, these things kind of melded together in this world of sounds I was listening to outside of me having any control of any of it. So it was like this whole soundscape I was exposed to. So I was hoping, Mr. Jesse James Figueroa, you could bring us back to being the youngest Jesse James Figueroa you remember being, and tell us a little bit about what it sounded like to be you before you had any control over the music in your life and some of the earliest musical memories you have.
Wow, that can go either way, because it was like my parents, they're both Puerto Rican, but they're hip, so they from the city. So it could be anything from Cool and the Gang to Grand Combo or something, you know what I'm saying? Or some Tito Puentes or something like that. Or it could be Joski Love, Pee Wee Herman, or so it's very parallel on my end, you know what I mean? Just because the way I was raised. So it was like if I was in my grandmother's house, I know I was gonna hear some Grand Combo or something like that. But
Right.
if I was at home, with moms and pops, some Cool in the Gang or some Al Green or some smooth shit gonna come on.
And was y'all how were you all listening to music back then? Like, were y'all like basically playing the radios? Was it tapes, vinyls? Like, what was the kind of vibe of how y'all was bumping it? Was it a big part of your life growing up?
Uh, Well, it was kind of, around these times, especially being it's holidays, it was super party time. But my grandmother actually had an 8-track tape for a long time. It was like an 8-track with a tuner, AM/FM tuner with the record player on the top.
Right.
So she'll either play a record or pop in a 8-track.
Nice. And were you like interested in music when you were young, or was it just kind of something that was around you?
I was always interested in music, and it was really the influence really came from my sister because my sister actually was the one who was writing before me because she's older than me, obviously. So it really came through my sister.
So like when you were growing up, she was already writing and making stuff, or like so that was already kind
She
of
was she wasn't recording, but she was already writing rhymes. She had a book of rhymes that I used to steal and try to rewrite them and change her name to my name and
Hold
shit
on.
like that.
You saying you straight up when you was like young, you jacked your sister's rhyme book and kind of stole her
Hell
rhyme?
yeah,
That's
yes
awesome.
I did,
I respect that.
yes I did.
But that's cool still. So you're saying like since time you have memories of being influenced by somebody writing rhymes and kind of putting it in your face. So
Absolutely.
you've been exposed to so that's like big, right? Because where I'm from, Montreal, some people had that experience. Most people did not have an experience like that. So it's mad nifty. What's it like? So like when we hear about growing up in New York, being surrounded by hip hop, like that's just the vibe to us. So like, can you tell us a bit about what that experience is like when you're young and just kind of being immersed into this culture that's kind of around you?
I mean, it goes from everything to being at school and the way you dress and the sneakers you got on, and then the summertime and going to the parks and seeing which DJs is out there, and just being stuck and people just dancing and block parties and like that was. Let me tell you something, man. That was the old New York, man. Block parties every summer. You go to every block. You just go from block party to block party. Even the carnivals would be crazy. They'll block the street off and have a little carnival with like a Ferris wheel and all them janky rides that you could probably get killed on, but them shits is fun as hell.
Say where, like in the middle of the streets.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really cool. Like I see Danny agreeing in the background. Souls is popping up, confirming. Yo, that's like we used to have those things in the malls come through, but like to me, it's wild to think about in the middle of the streets having a bunch of carnival rides and constant parties. Cause like, yeah, no, you're the first person to bring that up in anybody I talk to.
Oh yeah, all the street carnivals, that was everything. You could do everything. They even had the little gambling things. We used to play Chuck a Luck. Like it was dope. So
That's
you could play anything from the darts and getting a stuffed animal to gambling a couple dollars on the dice games, and it was so dope. It was that's a different vibe right there. That was a whole different thing, man.
Man,
This
that's
is like early 90s, mid 90s, when it was super dope.
how old were you around then?
I was about 14, 15, 16, around those ages.
And at this point, so like, when do you start getting into like rhyming and stuff yourself?
When I started really getting into it was about 15, when I decided this is like what I want to do. I want to be a fucking rapper. I want to be an MC. This is what I want to do. And I just started writing and writing. And I had these dudes that lived across. Well, first off, I lived in East Harlem with my grandmother on 109th and Lexington. And across the street was this dude that he had like a little deal back in the days, and it was cool. He was pretty successful. It wasn't nothing too crazy. Made a couple dollars, invested into some equipment, and just started pulling us out off the street and going to his crib to record and shit. And that was kind of my start. And then it was like, he gathered up about six of us, and then took us all to like the professional studio down on like 28th, 29th Street by the Madison Square Garden. That's
Right,
where all the major studios used to be at back then.
right. So you're like young. You're exposed to hip hop because your sister's writing. Are you like avid, like when you're like going through school and stuff? Are people rapping around you too? Are your peers into it, or is it just kind of like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody's rapping. Somebody's on the lunch table making the beat. There's battles going on in the lunchroom. That was really where it happened in the lunchroom. The lunchroom was everything. You know, Going through your classes, you wait for lunch, and everybody, what's up? What you got today? You know what I mean? And battling was different back then too. It wasn't more like the way it's structured today. It was just more of like who got the flyest rhymes. Who sometimes it was who got the most rhymes. Who got more rhymes than the next nigga? Like I could keep spitting, you running out of rhymes. You know. So it was that kind of thing back then. It wasn't so more I'm trying to rip your head off battle like the way it is today, which I love. You know what I mean? Not saying it like that, but it was just a different. It was just a different approach.
no? I totally appreciate that. Um, so like back then, were you also involved in other stuff? Like were you into the drawing arts and things like that? Were you into dancing? Any of that kind of vibes?
I mean, everybody danced in the hood. You know what I mean? You had to have a little something, you know what I mean, to go to the parties and shit. But I wasn't like a dancer, nah. And I dabbled with graffiti, but nah, I wasn't really into super drawing. I got into graphics and things like that a little later on, but nah.